Hey, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Erik and Derek, Tiger Football Talk. We're just two Clemson grads who love nothing more than to talk a little more about Clemson football each week, and we're excited to break down this one. This is number 3 Clemson, number 2 Notre Dame. This is pride on the line. This is retribution for Clemson. This is a rematch of the game of the year, or the game of the century. This is a highly anticipated matchup for the ACC, probably one of the biggest games the ACC has had in a while because of what is at stake. Before we go into it, hit like, hit subscribe, helps us out a ton for that support. And while you're doing that, Erik, break it down for us as far as what channel at the time and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, like you said, number 3 Clemson versus number 2 Notre Dame, 9-1 versus 10-0, with Clemson's one loss coming at Notre Dame. It's going to be in Charlotte at 4 p.m. ABC, Kirk Herbstreit and the crew's calling our game. Weather looks good. It's going to be like a 50-55 degree game in the afternoon. I'm excited about that, so we don't have to worry about any sort of cold or rain like we did a couple weeks ago against Virginia Tech. Spread right now is 10.5 point favorite for Clemson, which I'm very surprised about, and we'll get into that. With the over-under at 60.5, which is a decently high-scoring game, but I mean that's a 30-30 game, not crazy. Like you said, it's a rematch, probably of the game of 2020. That BYU Coastal Carolina probably comes in a close second, but this game featured higher-ranked teams. It was on the road, college football playoff implications, ACC championship implications for both teams, and it went into double overtime with DJ Uiagalelei in place of Trevor Lawrence. It's the 4th time ever that there's been a top 5 matchup this season, and the loser of the first game won the second time every time. Which we talked about it kind of the last time. If we saw each other again, typically the losing team has the advantage. So right now, maybe that's what Vegas is pricing in, is that Clemson has that second time playing advantage, being the loser. But the Tigers are 3-2 against the Irish, and the Notre Dame currently has a 16-game winning streak dating all the way back to last year. But Clemson has 5 straight ACC championship wins, which is an ACC record, and a 6th win this weekend could put Clemson into a Power 5 record for the most championship wins.
It is ridiculous the amount of disrespect Notre Dame is getting. Before we even go into this, it just needs to be addressed because Notre Dame comes in, beats a good Clemson team. We can talk all day long that they were not at full strength, but it wasn't necessarily directly Trevor Lawrence because DJ Uiagalelei came in through more passing yards against Notre Dame than anyone else has ever thrown against Notre Dame in their long and illustrious history. They win at home. It was a great win, and we even talked about it afterwards. Like, yeah, they're missing some players, but you can't point to Trevor Lawrence necessarily directly in this game as the reason why we lost. And all Notre Dame has done since that is gone on this tear of destroying opponents, beating a great UNC team that we just saw absolutely blast Miami. And so the media is just looking at this and just giving Clemson 10.5 points because we're getting our players back. And I think a lot of that is branding. It's just Clemson, you get to ACC championship game, you get to big games, you just expect Clemson to win it. And also I think it just helps from a narrative like we don't have to question who's in the college football playoff if Clemson wins. But Notre Dame is a fantastic team, a great team that earned what I thought was all of our respect when they beat Clemson the first time around. But it just doesn't seem like that's the case. Am I wrong in that? Does it just feel like they're being disrespected for really no reason?
Oh, it feels like they're being disrespected, and which is crazy to me because we look back at the game, Clemson versus Notre Dame, and today I think Notre Dame is even better. I think Ian Book has only gotten better. Like we talked about the fact that Ian Book played the best game of his career, and he looks better today than he looked back then. So, yeah,
True.
I mean, Clemson gets healthy. We're getting a lot of guys back. Trevor's going to be at the helm. It'll hopefully help our running game, which, I mean, last time we played, Notre Dame held Clemson to 34 yards rushing. 34 yards. That's 5 feet a carry. But like you said, DJ threw for 439 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, our offense was still humming, even though Notre Dame stopped our run game. So I think Trevor Lawrence being back brings a little bit of that run game into the play. But I think right now Notre Dame's being disrespected. And as a Clemson fan and as a person rooting for the Clemson Tigers, I'm not happy about that because I don't need them to have any more fuel than they have. I wanted them to come into this game thinking they had it in the bag and Clemson was the underdog, but that's not the case. And it'd be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, just I'm all for, like, the first time around, we didn't give them as much respect as they deserved. But like just sitting here, what they've accomplished, it's unfortunate because I feel like a lot of teams have watched them play, and they're a talented team through and through. Similar to last time we played, we talked a lot about injuries, and it's because when you get to these high-profile matchups, you need every talented person you can get out onto the field. Last time we were talking about who's not on the field from a Clemson standpoint. I want to jump in straight into who Notre Dame is not going to have on the field. So starting center Jarrett Patterson went down a few weeks ago. He suffered a foot injury against Boston College, and he's been out for the entire year. Now this is the best offensive line in college football, one of the best that's been around since the playoff committee had basically started. This is a Remington Award finalist, is what he would have been if he didn't get hurt. And then the backup center, who's Zeke Correll, was a top 100 guy. He suffered a high ankle sprain against North Carolina. And then you look at Josh Lugg comes in. He's I think a redshirt senior. He's played like 30 games, but center is not his natural position. He's used to playing guard, so he's played center a little bit. It looks like everything that's been saying right now is that Josh Lugg, who is a master human being, I think he's like 6'7" or something like that. It looks like Josh Lugg may get the start at center, but the fact that you're going into this game questioning who your starting center is, who is the quarterback of the offensive line, that's a big deal because the offensive line was obviously the strength of this team and a huge reason why Ian Book was able to stay upright and they were able to run the ball. If they have question marks on this line, immediately I start looking at being like, that's not a great start for Notre Dame.
No, and you mentioned Josh Lugg. He's been dealing with lower back issues and has a hand injury to his snapping hand. I mean, they took X-rays on it, and the test came back negative, so there's nothing broken. But, I mean, even your starting guy, the next guy up is injured. Their right guard, Tommy Kramer, is presumed to return after having an emergency appendectomy just before the North Carolina game. So, yeah, Notre Dame's going to have some holes on their offensive line that they're going to need to fill in. I believe that they're going to be able to do that. Like you mentioned, they have probably the best offensive line that I have seen in a long time, which really helps their running game, and they proved it last time they played. I mean, they have their speedy wide receiver back, Brandon Lindsay. He returns for the Irish. He pulled his hamstring in the summer and has not played a game. But that's going to be a new piece to the puzzle that Notre Dame gets to put on the field that we have no film on. No one has any film on him playing. So it'll be interesting to see how they implement him. Right now, Ian Book is the winningest QB in Notre Dame history, and he deserves it. I mean, he's been playing lights out this year. Probably has one of the best career years for a quarterback in Notre Dame history and many college football program histories. So the key is going to be, can Clemson get pressure? Can they cover? Can they hold? I mean, we talked about this last time. Can they cover long enough for Ian Book to either have to throw the ball or get pressured? Because if he starts scrambling again, it's going to be a really long night for Clemson's defense.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about why there's so many reasons why this is such a big game. I mean, there's just so much I want to talk about. Like the pride on the line for Clemson. Clemson owns this conference. You can't have Notre Dame come in for 1 year, the only year that presumably they're going to be in the ACC playing football, contend for the ACC championship, and then steal it out from underneath you when you own the conference. But also, you just mentioned it, Ian Book is the winningest quarterback in Notre Dame history. That's a long history. And Trevor Lawrence is the exact same thing on our side as well. Like, I was trying to look up the stat. I can't find it anywhere where you've had two winningest quarterbacks in the entire history of their respective colleges playing against each other, and then you add everything else that's on the line. It's just a long list that makes this just like an incredible matchup. I will say we want to talk about the playmakers a little bit. Javon McKinley, who went over 100 yards against Clemson the last time they met. He's been on a tear recently. He's gone over 100 yards in 3 of the last 4 games, and then someone else I think is going to have to step up. I'm looking for the running backs. Erik and I talked about this a little bit before the game. Last time, they just stood in. Williams just stood in there and was essentially a 6th lineman and just stopped against the blitz. I'm really curious to see if they end up leaking out one of the running backs, because Chris Tyree was very much underutilized last time around. I think he had 2 rushes for -2 yards or something, but I want to see if they end up getting these running backs in space, maybe one-on-one, instead of keeping them in as extra linemen. But it worked really well for them last time. That's the challenge of the person who's won. It's like, do you keep to the same formula, and how much do you really want to change it?
Yeah, and I mean, you look back at the game last time, which is the footage we have to grade Clemson versus Notre Dame. Brent Venables came out in a 5-2 to try to stop that run game, and it failed pretty miserably. And he quickly reverted back to the 3-3-5, which Louisville used earlier in the year to really hold Notre Dame to. I think they held them to like 14 points. So it's going to be interesting to see that. But I think the other wrinkle that Notre Dame's going to throw in this, looking at all the past film of the teams that Clemson has played, is they're going to take some notes from Virginia Tech in terms of trying to hold time of possession. I think they're going to be a lot more run heavy, trying to keep the ball from Trevor, from Clemson's offense, trying to keep them out of rhythm, out of sync. And I think they're going to probably snap the ball late. I think they're going to stay in the huddle. Yeah. I think they're going to probably change plays at the line quickly because Brent Venables, as we all know, is the quarterback of that defense and can call plays on the fly, quickly adjusting to what he sees being audibled. And I think that's one thing that Notre Dame's going to pick up is the quick snaps and time of possession. But we'll see. I mean, Brent Venables is, in my opinion, the best defensive coordinator in the league right now. And last time they played, Clemson held Notre Dame to 10 points in the second half. So that score, I mean, it went to double overtime, so it seemed a lot heavier of a score of offenses. But Brent, after the first couple series, kind of dialed it in and got our defense playing with a bunch of young guys because we were, if you remember, I think we had 7 guys out in injury, 7 starters out in injury in that game. So having the starters back and having Brent Venables with some more tape and some more time to get these guys ready, who knows? Who knows what we're going to see on Saturday?
Yeah, I feel like if you're a Notre fan watching, Notre Dame fan watching this right now, you're like, oh, there it is. There's the injury excuse that we heard from last time around. It's like, all right, we don't want to put in the first few minutes. We know we lose these guys right away. But yeah, you're right. Like by the end of the game, we were missing a ton of people. We also missed Xavier Thomas in the first half of that. So to have him back, I mean, if you think about the defensive line that we're going to have is Tyler Davis, a high 4-star, Miles Murphy, 5-star, KJ Henry, 5-star, Brian Brzee, 5-star, Xavier Thomas, 5-star. Unless I'm missing someone, that's our defensive line against their offensive line, which is 4-star, 4-star, 5-star, 4-star. Like it's going to be so great to see. It's going to be a fantastic matchup throughout the night. And to add an extra wrinkle to this, the defensive coordinator for Notre Dame is going to be going back to his alma mater. He just got hired as a Vanderbilt coach. So from what I've seen, he's not committed to coaching Notre Dame the rest of the year. He's committed to this game. But with recruiting right around the corner, we just had a National Signing Day or early commitment or something like that this week. I can't imagine he stays with this team because he's going to need to jump over to Vanderbilt and create a recruiting class out of thin air. So I wonder, like he's very well liked within the program, very well respected. He's one of the top 5 or 10 defensive coordinators. He's had a great year, great last couple of years. But does that distract or detract from this team whatsoever, knowing that he's going to be leaving, or does that add fuel to them and be like, hey, we want to do this for him? Not really sure how it's going to go. Yeah,
this is the hardest time of the year for when these coaching positions start opening up and these top coaches, defensive, offensive coordinators, I mean, heck, even head coaches are being poached and or being interviewed or trying to get pulled away to these other programs. It's a hard time of year to concentrate on what's ahead of you while there's all these other distractions going on behind you. So that's definitely a wrinkle that we'll need to look for. But like I said, last time, Notre Dame's defense really crushed Clemson's running game. They forced 3 turnovers, 3 fumbles, one of them that was returned for a touchdown, and Clemson was 4 for 15 on 3rd down. So Notre Dame needs to bring that again to be able to keep this game close from a defensive standpoint, because on offense, Trevor Lawrence is going to take the helm in this one, and he's going to want revenge even though he wasn't even on the field. He's going to want revenge because he was on the sidelines watching his team not being able to propel them to victory and having to just watch this game. That's a big deal. And I think, ETN's been dealing with a knee injury the past couple of weeks. He should, with this week off, I think he should be ready to go. But if we learned anything from that Virginia Tech game for the Clemson offense, was that we've got a stable of running backs that each have their own unique skill set that we need to implement better. And I hope that Tony Elliott has put together a complete game plan for this game to propel our offense to be efficient, because we know Notre Dame's going to want to hold the ball. And we need to be balanced between the run game and the pass game. And hopefully with Trevor Lawrence back at the helm, we can accomplish that.
Yeah, Virginia Tech, I think, was a great test. Obviously, they're not the animal that Notre Dame is, but I think Notre Dame was the first team that I remember specifically implementing something from a play calling standpoint. We talked about them getting to the line late, or them, having a quarterback run over to give them the play call. And then Virginia Tech taking it kind of to the next level. I think we're going to see that, obviously, in this game. You mentioned that. But I'm also happy to finally hear that, not happy, but like we kind of knew it, that Travis Etienne was a little banged up. Apparently he got his knee nicked up in this Notre Dame game a few weeks ago, and maybe that's why we haven't seen that same burst that we've been kind of used to. We were commenting that after the Virginia Tech game, like he doesn't look that explosive. And we put these other running backs in, they find holes, and we're all of a sudden thinking like this entire time, like we've been blaming the offensive line. Is it Travis Etienne? No, it's still the offensive line. They still need to open up holes. But listen, if Travis Etienne is banged up, instead of having a 75% Etienne out there, throw in Lynjay Dixon, throw in Kobe Pace, throw in all these Malusi, throw in these other guys, get them in space, and have multiple out there at the same time is what I would love to see. Last time you did mention it, like they forced 3 turnovers. That the fumble return for a touchdown was just really unfortunate, and then third down conversion. It's just coulda, woulda, shoulda if Trevor Lawrence is in there. But I think we were 4 of 15 on third down. DJ did a great job going over the top. We had big explosive plays all night long, but we have to be able to have long, consistent drives. We had terrible field position last time in this game. Are we able to convert on third down, whether it's just precision passing from Trevor Lawrence or him using his legs? Either way, we have to do better on third down because that's a strength of this Notre Dame defense.
I think the other big part in this game is that Frank Latson's going to be back. He banged up his foot a couple of weeks ago and has not played since, but everything I've heard is that he's trending in the right direction to suit up this Saturday. However, Nagata will still not be able to go after having surgery on his core injury. That's a huge hit for us because, if you watched the Virginia Tech game, I think one of the big grievances that Clemson fans has was, where's our deep passing game? And really where our deep passing game was, none of our wide receivers were healthy. Especially our deep threats, the Frank Latson, the Nagatas. So, we were throwing 50-50 balls up to Spector, and the poor guy, he's 5'10", he's not going to make that catch. It's just, that's not his game. So hopefully Frank Latson will be able to go and give Trevor that deep threat that we definitely need. I think Tony Elliott needs to involve the tight ends more. We have Galloway, we have Chark, we have a bunch of guys that are really good at tight end that can release late maybe, heck, even run routes, because we need that extra deep threat, big guy downfield. We mentioned that ETN should be good to go. Our running back stable should be good to go. The question for me is, can we get the run game going? I don't think we can come into this game expecting to throw for 400-plus yards without a run game. And we need to implement the run game. And if the run game is not working for some reason, we need to get ETN the ball in space. Whether it's screens, whether it's late releases, whatever it may be, we need to do that. And I'm really curious to see if Tony Elliott can call a complete game. And I'm going to say this multiple times in this video because we need to see that, because we are playing the number 2 team. And Notre Dame has proven that. They have proven that they can play with anybody. And if we come out in that second, third quarter slump where we're just slow, and I don't care if we're up 21-0. We lose the game if we do not keep the tempo and the pedal to the metal the whole game.
I was trying to look back to the last time Travis Etienne, was kept under. How many yards did he end up having? Like 30 yards or something?
Yeah.
And you know what it reminded?
Yeah, 30 yards,
yeah,
I think.
You know what it reminded me, honestly, of the Ohio State game last year. So I just looked it up. He had 36 yards against Ohio State. And we got down. We had to come back. And it was Trevor Lawrence with his legs and that long run and a couple key plays in order to get us over the top. And excellent defense, crushing down Justin Fields, creating turnovers. There's a way we win this game without being able to run the ball. I don't have a lot of confidence we're going to be able to run. If we run for 100 yards, I think everyone's sitting there clapping their hands being like, we must have done something really creative. It's just not a strength of our team. It's a strength of theirs. Probably just not going to work. But can Trevor Lawrence get us enough run plays, whether they're designed or not? And can we use Travis Etienne? Travis Etienne went for over 100 yards receiving against Ohio State. We did swing plays. We got him one-on-one. Great creative play calling where he went out, went up the middle for a touchdown. Those are the things that you're talking about where, if we can't do it conventional, let's get unconventional. Let's get creative and get our playmakers in space, because honestly, Notre Dame's going to do that on the opposite side. Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator for Notre Dame, been more than impressed with him. I did not necessarily think a ton about Ian Book. This year he's been great, and I think a lot of that credit has to go to Tommy Rees and what he's done with the offense on that side of the ball. I do want to move over to our defense a little bit because I think everything we've talked about to this point is window dressing to what this is really going to come down to, which is, can our defense slow down Ian Book and Notre Dame? Because at the end of the day, Notre Dame outgained us. They outperformed us. They didn't throw for more yards, but their total yardage exceeded ours by a wide margin, and we just get all these players back. I'm going to list them off. Skalski, who did not play against Virginia Tech due to some tightness. He played I think 3 snaps or something. He's going to be back, and Dabo Swinney says he's close to 100%. Tyler Davis, who missed the last game, he's 100%. He's ready to go. Mike Jones, who missed that Notre Dame game, he's back. He's ready to go. Andrew Booth, who missed the Virginia Tech game due to a deep thigh bruise he got in practice a few weeks ago, he's ready to go. Jake Venables, backup linebacker, he broke his arm against Virginia Tech. He'll be out. And I believe the safety Zanders is going to be out as well. That was the latest report I saw. I don't think those are as much of a hit. I'm just excited to see those players coming back.
Yeah, I think, and I'm going to talk about this later on, but I think this game comes down to, can Clemson's defense contain Ian Book and stop McKinley from running? And that's what it comes down to. And Clemson only gave up 27 points during regulation the last time we played. And we talked about the injuries, and beyond the injuries, we had a bunch of young guys, young freshmen out there that are 4- and 5-star recruits, but were kind of thrown into gameplay that might have not been expecting to play in that game and might not have been as prepared. And if you see the Clemson games after that Notre Dame game where these freshmen were still playing due to the injuries, it took a few games for them to really start grooving and getting the understanding of where they needed to be on the field. So having the starters back is one thing. Having these freshmen that potentially will need to come in and play, barring anything happen, also more prepared to play, is going to play a big factor in this. It's going to come down to, can we contain Ian Book? That's it. I mean, he is the guy for Notre Dame. He can run the ball. He can throw the ball. He can get his playmakers involved. He can audible. He's a full package quarterback. I mean, he really is. And I think we can do it, but it's college football, and you just never know. You never know what's going to happen. And these guys, teams, are playing for a spot in the college football playoff. They're playing for a spot in the ACC, to win the ACC. And it's a big game, and everybody knows it, and everybody wants to win. So to me, it's a toss-up. I can see Notre Dame winning this game, and I can see Clemson winning this game.
Yeah, which is why it's so surprising. There's a 10.5-point spread. And this is it's really going to come down to coaching, because we're super excited to have someone like Skalski back, middle of that defense. But Skalski versus Ian Book one-on-one is not something that Clemson wants to see. Mike Jones Jr. is a little more athletic, but you can't put a DB in there and spy Ian Book the whole time, because then they're just going to run the ball, because then you're going to end up with a lineman on the DB. It's gonna have to be a creative solution to the Ian Book problem. I mean, I watched the UNC game against Notre Dame, and Ian Book did the exact same thing. He is fast. He's able to cut on a dime. He's just very nifty. He's a hard guy to stop one-on-one. And, if it's 3rd and 4, they can run the ball. They can easily get 4 yards to running ball. They can throw it to one of their tight ends on a quick out, or you can just roll Ian Book out on an option. He can either throw it to his tight end, or he can run it for 4 yards. It's really hard to stop this guy from not getting 4 yards of carry. And that's why they were able to convert so much on 3rd down. We weren't able to, ended up that DJ was actually hurt for the Boston College and the Notre Dame game, so he wasn't really interested in running the ball. I'm more confident in our ability to try and slow down their overall running game. I don't know how much we can really stop Ian Book. You have to get inside pressure, which is where Tyler Davis comes in. Tyler Davis is on the shorter side. I think they list him at 6'2". I think that's with Clayton. I think he's 6'1". Going up against a 6'7" Lugoff, if he's able to get underneath his pads and drive him back, I think it was a Syracuse game I was watching, just Notre Dame versus Syracuse. They were able to get inside pressure when Lugoff was at center, and it's because he's so tall. Sometimes he has an issue with leverage, and it'll be interesting to see how that matchup comes down. But it's going to be tough to get Ian Book. And Ian Book can run for 37 yards, but if it gets you 4 first downs, that's a successful day for Ian Book.
Absolutely. I think Venables goes back to the 3-3-5. I think we try to do some more contain, keep our defensive ends with Miles Murphy and Brisset. Tell him to pressure, but you got to keep contained. You got to keep him in. We can't let him scramble out and around towards the sidelines. If he's going to scramble, it needs to be towards the middle of the field where we at least have linebackers and someone to pick him up. I think that's going to be the game plan. I'm really curious that you brought it up earlier. What are the Notre Dame running backs going to do? The big thing that they did last time to really stifle Brent Venables' blitz defense was they had a running back in there every play to pick up the defense, blitzer, on a pass play, and it was hugely successful. I mean, Clemson did not land many blitzes at all in that Notre Dame game. I'm curious to see if they go back to it. Virginia Tech tried it, and I think their running back picked up a decent amount of blitzes that Clemson brought. And when we bring blitzes and they're picked up, there's men open, and Ian Book is athletic and as good a quarterback as there is to hit them. I don't know. Where do you see your prediction on this game?
Yeah, it's how many times do we see Notre Dame versus Clemson? We brought 6 or 7 guys. They were all picked up. And then Ian Book seemingly had the option to hop out of the pocket and go scramble or wait 7 seconds because he had all the time in the world and then throw it to one of his wide receivers down the field. If I'm looking at this, I think some things are going to change in this because for the last time we were talking about Notre Dame, I talked about Dalen Hayes. I talked about Kyle Hamilton. There's a linebacker for Notre Dame that I can't pronounce his name. I'm not going to try to, but I just felt like they did not get a ton of pressure on DJ until the very end, and that was a little bit of indecision on DJ's part. Can the Notre Dame defensive line get a little more pressure on Trevor Lawrence? I'll be interested to see that. I think this is going to be a tight battle. I think defenses are going to show up, even though there's explosive playmakers on both sides of the ball for the offenses of Notre Dame and for Clemson. These are the winningest quarterbacks in each of their respective histories, and there's a reason for that, but these defenses are outstanding. I think the 10.5 is ridiculous. I'm not saying Clemson or Notre Dame can't win by more than that, but like this has a feeling of a close game. I'm going to go, what's the over-under again? 60 and a half or something? Yep. I'm going to say it's 27-24. I'm taking the under. I'm taking us not covering the spread, and I'm talking about like a physical, cold game in Charlotte. Yeah, that's what I'm going to go with. What are your thoughts?
When this week started and I started thinking about this game, really in depth and kind of digging into it, I honestly felt like Notre Dame was going to win this game. I felt for multiple days, every time I was like, I think Notre Dame's got this. I think they've got the age, the discipline. They've got, obviously, they're 10-0. They've got Ian Book. They had our number last time. And, I kept thinking about it, and I'm like, man, I'm going to come on this show, and I'm going to predict Notre Dame's going to win. And then I started talking to my friends and kind of delving into it a little bit more and looking back at that past game where we had the ball with a couple minutes to go with the game in hand, and we couldn't run out the clock with a backup quarterback. We had 3 fumbles. I mean, this is the ACC championship game that Clemson has not lost in 5 years. Oh, and by the way, Notre Dame isn't even in the ACC. They're in the ACC for 1 year due to COVID. And is Clemson really going to allow a team that doesn't even want to be in the ACC to come in and take our trophy for the 1 year and then leave? I mean, that's a chip. Not to mention, we lost the first outing. All these players that were either injured or even on the field, they want this game. They were asking for this game. I mean, the best thing the ACC could have done is cancel this game and, hey, we're both in the playoff. But I think both teams want to play this game. I know Notre Dame's got a chip on their shoulder. I know that they've been put down. This 10.5 point spread is ridiculous. I think they come in ready to play. I'm not worried about that at all. But this is college football, and anything can happen. And the problem with college football versus the NFL is there's these weird swing plays, this momentum that I talk about probably every week that happens. And we've seen Clemson show up in these big games lately. I mean, we've seen Clemson just dominate Ohio State the past couple of years. Sure, we came from behind last year, but we show up in these big games and we close out. And with Trevor Lawrence at the helm, only losing one game in his college career, being the national championship game. I actually have this game as a 36-24 win for Clemson right now, which is crazy to me because that actually is covering the spread. It hits the under, but I can see, and honestly, I can see this game. I've talked about this a million times. I can see this game being 21-0 at the half Clemson. I can see this being 21-0 at the half Notre Dame. So it just really depends on which team shows up, how they show up, who gets the first punch in the face, who gets that first turnover. Can Clemson get pressure on Ian Book? Can Notre Dame get pressure on Trevor Lawrence? Because we know Trevor Lawrence is, at Virginia Tech, he was under 35% passing when he was under pressure.
Yeah.
So Notre Dame knows that. So, honestly, it's a toss-up. I'm with you on the 27-24 prediction being a nail-biter. I don't see this being a nail-biter. I see this as one team taking the lead and sticking with the lead. But I think it could be Clemson or Notre Dame. I'm going to say 36-24 Clemson because I think with it being a rematch, with Clemson losing the first time, with Clemson needing to win to get in, and Notre Dame having that ability to potentially lose in a close one and stay in, I think Dabo and Brent have this team ready, and I think Clemson pulls this one out.
By 12 points, too. You're one of them. You're part of that media that thinks they're going to cover the 10.5-point spread. I have so much respect for this Notre Dame team. Looking at them inside and out and what they're able to do, and the fact that Clemson hasn't been able to run the ball very well this year, and our wide receiving core has been taking a hit this year. It's just, it doesn't feel like it's lopsided. We don't have a massive talent advantage. I think the coaches are pretty even. If we win this game, we win by a lot. It's because Trevor Lawrence, Playmakers, and really just the fact that we've been there and we've done that. And we haven't mentioned this, but this may not be the last time we play this game again. We may be a few weeks from now. I'm talking about another matchup against Notre Dame, which I hope would be the case because that means that Clemson won, and then presumably we each have to win our playoff first games and then meet for the national championship. That'd be awesome. Great for the ACC. I hope more than anything, Notre Dame, not more than anything because I want Clemson to win, I hope Notre Dame reconsiders about joining the ACC. What this has done for the ACC and for Notre Dame branding, the amount of people tuning in to watch Notre Dame now, because now every game matters in relation to the ACC. The entire ACC, like we're all up and down the East Coast, is now watching Notre Dame. This is great for their brand, and I hope they recognize that. And I don't believe they will at all. I think they'll go back to their individual thing and whatever it is, what it is. But I hope they at least take a second to think about joining the ACC specifically for reasons like this.
No, I agree completely. And then that throw at them not being in the ACC is because I do see them just going back to being independent. But I agree with you 100%. They should be in the ACC. They bring so much to the ACC, and I'm so happy that they have been a part of the ACC this year, even though Clemson has to fight for their lives right now versus going through a cupcake schedule, even though I think we have 5 teams ranked in the top 25 right now. But I'm so happy to have Notre Dame in the ACC right now. It is that marquee matchup that ACC fans enjoy watching. They just do. Whether you win or lose. When we lost to Notre Dame, I was still excited to have that game on. It was a great game because watching all those other games that are blowouts for whatever team, whether it's a Miami and North Carolina blowing out their opponents, they're just not as exciting as a marquee matchup. And this one's going to be 2 versus 3, 4 p.m. on ABC in Charlotte. Decent weather. I think both teams are going to be almost at full strength. We've talked about a little bit injuries here and there, but almost at full strength in a rematch that went to double overtime last time. I am super excited for this game. I am super nervous for this game because I can see either team winning, and my prediction of 36-24 is a momentum going one direction, but it can easily be the other direction. But I got to stick with something, so that's what I'm going to go with. Hey, get ready for this game. You got Alabama playing Florida as well. Ohio State playing Northwestern, so it's going to be a full slate of championship games on Saturday. Sunday's going to be the college football playoff final rankings, which is going to be interesting to see how the playoff committee views all these games and feels what these teams are going to be ranked at the end of the year. Help us out, like and subscribe. We'll bring you the post game on Sunday. Win or lose, it's going to be a good one.
It will be a chaotic weekend. Hopefully not, but there's a lot of games going. You still have USC and Oregon playing. You have Iowa State and Oklahoma. But nothing matters as much as this Notre Dame and Clemson, not just because we're Clemson fans, but because from a national standpoint, this is huge for both teams and for the entire country. Like Erik said, like, subscribe. Thanks for joining us. And above all else, go Tigers.
Go Tigers.